It's been a while since I got in front of this camera and behind this microphone, but I got a few bits and pieces that I want to touch on. The reason for the absence was not too long ago, I took a trip out to New York to watch the Yankees versus the Dodgers, so I want to talk on my experience about actually visiting a baseball ground for a baseball game for the very first time. Whilst I was over in New York, ironically, Major League Baseball came to London, and it would be remiss of me to not mention that in any regard. But one thing I do want to touch on is that last night, Major League Baseball honoured the Negro Leagues and the Negro League players at Rickwood Field in a special game and broadcast, and it quite simply wouldn't be right to talk about baseball without delving into that and the impact that has on the sport in whole. So let's not waste any time and let's talk baseball. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Baseball. I'm your host, Tom Scholes. And yes, it's been a while since I've been here. It's been a while since I've sat down, looked into the camera, popped the glasses on and put the mic on to really talk about what's been going on, to talk about my thoughts about the game and everything along those lines. The truth of the matter is, there's two reasons really. I went on holiday, took a time out from everything. It was the end of the Premier League season, just before the European Championship started. Took time out, went to New York, relaxed as much as you can in New York, took in Yankees v Dodgers on the Saturday night, sat in the bleachers, and I'll talk about that whole experience in a second. I could have done something when I came back, but the European Championships have started. It's incredibly intense, incredibly fun, and that's taken up my attention, but it's time to really take a step back from that, get involved in this, get behind this, and just let things out and discuss a few things that are important to talk about and I think need to be said. So we'll start off in New York. Me and my mother and father went to Yankee Stadium to watch Yankees v Dodgers on the Saturday evening, and on my experience of it, I don't know what I was expecting, to be brutally honest, but I was somewhat disappointed with the Yankees fans. Now, the game, it is what it is. You know, Nestor Cortez was pitching, so you kind of didn't expect all that much, to be brutally honest. And, you know, let's be honest, the performance itself wasn't great, but if you lose to the Dodgers, it happens. Sometimes it happens. Where my opinions of it come into it is the fan experience. And what I mean about the fan experience is the difference in culture of what I'm used to in British sports, English grounds, English Premier League teams, all of that jazz, and the American fan culture. And it's very jarring as someone that is used to Premier League teams and a certain way of fans being, that to go to a game and essentially be outnumbered by the away team, that was stark at first. I know there's a rich history of Dodgers fans in New York because of the time of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that's been passed down generations. I obviously understand that and have no problem with that. That happens in a lot of places where, you know, as the joke goes, there are more Man United fans in London than there are in Manchester. But, you know, it's just how it is. So I've got no problem with that. I understood there was going to be a lot of Dodgers fans because Dodgers are in town, very rarely come into town, and there's a high contingent of Dodgers fans in the city. 100% understand that. What I didn't expect was the Dodgers fans to almost immediately outperform the Yankees fans in terms of the atmosphere they were creating, the support for the team. There was multiple back and forth chants that it was like a "Come on, let's go Dodgers, let's go Yankees" over and over again, and it died down after a bit. And my reaction watching this unfold is kind of like, I was really confused, because this is the big game of the week. This was the biggest game of the season so far for the league, in terms of what many would consider two teams that should be looking to be in the World Series facing off against each other. And it didn't feel like that. It was busy, it was sold out, it was very packed, but at the end of the day, there was only one winner in the stands. And I believe it was Teoscar Hernandez hit a grand slam in I can't remember what inning it was, but he hit a grand slam, and the place flooded out. People were flooding out. And even before then, people were not paying attention. There was 4 people sat in front of us. We were sat in the bleachers, and there was 4 people sat in front of us who were not paying attention from about the 5th inning onwards. Now, one of them said he was a Cowboys fan and a Yankees fan, which is the least surprising thing of the night. But it was very odd, because when they got bored, they just pulled out like DraftKings or FanDuel or something like that, and were betting on the games. And they were betting on what they were watching. And what we noticed was the only time they would become interested in the game, the only time they would become invested in what was going to happen, is if they had a line on it. They had Anthony Volpe to score a run at any time. So when he came up to bat, they were cheering for him. They wanted him to do well. Not because they wanted him to do well for the purpose of their bet. They were not bothered. They were not bothered in the slightest about the outcome of the game, because they didn't have money on it. It was very strange. It was very, very strange to be a part of. There was Dodgers fans around us that were creating atmosphere, and if you are a Dodgers fan and you were within that, you would have loved it. As a Yankees fan, I'm watching this and I'm sad, because where we sat, in front of us there were a mix of fans, Dodgers fans outweighing Yankees fans in terms of noise, and to the left we were just underneath the scoreboard, and there's like a congregation area where you can kind of like stand and watch the game and have some drinks and all of this kind of stuff. And there was more people there having fun with themselves and actually turning around. Most of them had their back to the action because they weren't bothered. They were not bothered in the slightest. There was a guy that was working as a vendor who was doing his job fantastically well. He was going up and down the concourse and up and down the bleachers and the stands with like giant baseball bats full of like slushy tequilas or something. And people were just swarming him to the point where the guy had to move out of the way of where people were sitting. He would find a gap on one of the benches, put his thing down, and kind of like charge people there and then. And he had to move away because so many people were clogging up the walkways. It was probably a health and safety violation. There were so many people getting up and down, not bothered about the game. And I'm not talking about when the game was done, like done and dusted. I'm talking about when the game was still relatively close. And the concession stands were packed from the moment we got inside. The club shop was packed. And it's like, it was eye-opening to me, and I'm fully aware that it's a very unique situation that we were in. We were at the 2 biggest teams in the league facing off against each other in New York on a Saturday night. Of course it's going to be busy. Would it be different if the A's were in town? Most definitely. And you'd probably get a very different vibe from there. I understand that. But it was just jarring to see so many people care so little about the game they had paid a lot of money to go and watch. So much was going on that I think people just are lost when it comes to this. And what it did show to me, what what I did notice about it was that is ideal for what a Premier League club would want. People who are up and down buying things, walking around with club shop bags. It was very odd, very strange to kind of watch happen and unfold, because it got to a point where we stopped really paying attention to the game and just were watching the characteristics of what people were doing behind us or around us and looking into the stands. And it was so strange. So strange. I sincerely hope the Premier League doesn't follow the route that this has had, where the game is secondary. But it dawned on me whilst we were there that it already has. And if you speak to people that go to like Tottenham Hotspur, where they keep the concourse open an hour before the game and an hour after the game, I believe it is. And it's almost as if the game itself, whilst true fans really care, people that go to the game will go for the game. But no, I don't think it's the way that I want my teams to be going, where the consumerism outweighs the importance of the game. The game should always be first. No problem with people buying things, obviously not. But there's, I don't know, I just didn't like the whole, someone's up to bat, so I'm going to get up and go get a pint. Wait, the line's going to be big regardless of when you go, mate. I know you're there for a long time, but up and down all the time, goodness me. It's very stark, the difference between the cultures. And I will defend American sports for almost everything, but the fan culture certainly isn't one of them, because it's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. No, we've done Super Bowls. I've been to a Lakers game. I've now been to a Yankees game. I've been to an MLS game. And all three are somewhat different. The Super Bowl is different because you've got a mix of fans who have paid money to be there and are riding the high and the tension that you have there, apart from the Philly fans who threw beer, not at us, but in the general direction of us. So I don't like Philly. I don't like Philly because of that. But the Lakers was another one where people just lost interest really early. I don't remember seeing many people leave, but they were certainly on their phones and not watching the game. That was what I remember. And this one was strange. The MLS was good because it had that football feel to it. It had something that was not exactly what we were used to, but close to what we were used to. And I think as long as you're used to that, that's absolutely fine. But whilst we were over there, ironically, baseball came back to London for the Major League Baseball London series between the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think slowly but surely, people are becoming more used to the idea of baseball in the UK. Maybe not to the level that the NFL is, because the NFL have been doing this for years, and the NFL promoted it better. But this feels like a year where it became a regular occurrence. And you see things like Bryce Harper doing a knee slide after he's hit a home run. That got some attention. Jeff McNeil of the Mets said he likes the idea that Harper has floated to have more teams come and hold a cup-style tournament, with the quote being, "It would be cool if you had 4 teams here. You could get 5-6 games. It's tough coming here for 2 days and then flying back to the States. If you could get more teams over here, make it more of an event, it would be a lot of fun." There won't be a series. By all accounts, there's not a series next year because it was meant to be in Paris, and it's not happening now. So the next London Games will be in 2026, which is during a World Cup or in and around a World Cup. So will be second fiddle to a lot of people. The Phillies manager Rob Thompson said, "I'd do it every year if we could. It's been a great experience. Tough loss today, but it was a great ball game for fans to watch." And I think that's the important thing about all of this. Things like sending them to London it just looks and feels new, but also is becoming that sense of familiarity, in the sense of when the NFL came to London, it was new to see them at Wembley, it was new to see new teams at Wembley, but to see the event at Wembley didn't become weird. It didn't become abnormal. It just became a thing now. And I think the same thing's going to happen with the London Stadium. I spoke about it last time. We were there doing a show for TalkSport, and we got pitch side access for the batting practice on the Friday. We were surrounded by people like Cody Bellinger, David Ross, Mike Napoli, Andrew Wainwright, Albert Pujols was kicking about. It was great fun, right? But the London Stadium is far more suited to that than it is football, weirdly. And I think it becomes more, if you have it once a year, and you have that normality of it. And I think this is, again, goes back to like the NFL thing. Everybody started to know, after a while, that the NFL at Wembley, and then the NFL at Tottenham Hotspur, was a regular occurrence. It wasn't one-off. It was there every year. Now, they might come back in 2025. They might just scrap it in general. But the important thing is to keep doing this, to keep growing the game, to keep promoting it. I'm massively in favour of doing anything it is to get people aware of the sport in this country, as you can see by this. My voice is very unlike anybody else that you'll hear talking about this. We have a lot of British voices that do this. I know that kind of contradicts what I've just said, but what I mean is there are British voices who are doing this, and yet it's still unusual to hear it on a wider level. Growing the game is so important here. There are a lot of people that love it. Yes, it is a bit of a novelty. Yes, it might be different to the fans in America. But I'm telling you, there is a fan base here that love this game. I am part of it. I couldn't be there this year, but if I could have, I would have. And I'm telling you now, it's so good to see. It's so... I don't know, having seen what the NFL can do here and how big that can grow, I'm desperate for it to be similar to Major League Baseball. So desperate for it. Because I just want it to be... I just want it to... not even well-liked. I just want it to be respected. I just want it to be to a level where people go, not my cup of tea, but if you do, that's absolutely fine. There's ways of promoting it. And they're slowly getting better at it. Other than having Mets pitchers who no longer play for the Mets on advertising hoardings. It's a shame, actually. Weirdly, it's a shame that they didn't have Grimace part of that when they came over. Because, God, that would have been fun. That would have been fun to see just him roaming around. I'm going to read some tweets now from the Bat Flips and Nerds British Baseball podcast. Finally got round to listening to Rates and Barrels preview the London series on last week's show. As with many others, I'm really disappointed. Some of the talking points were ill-informed and verging on rude. And then it's a thread of bits and pieces from it. So I'm just going to read them out now. The notion that there's no basis of NFL fandom here in the UK and Europe couldn't be further from the truth. Just at this series, we were blessed to share the media room with fan sites from Germany, Hungary, Czechia, France, and the Netherlands. The most viral stories of the weekend concerned the Belgium Jeff McNeil fan club, which was fun to see. Mason from Hoddesdon, who everybody has seen the video of. It's that young lad who says his favourite sport is baseball. He ends up meeting players from the Phillies and then just goes, "Hello, Trey Turner," all of that kind of stuff. Everyone's seen it and everyone has loved it, and a lot of people have even sent it to me. And when that happens, you know something's taken off. Rob Thompson saying he wants this series to last forever after meeting Philly fans in Passyunk Avenue. It has also diminished every single fan we know from Britain. The assumption we only watch a couple of games a week, that there's no streaming, and a little more than casual fans was plain ignorant, rather. Our friends, Major League Baseball UK community, hold fan meetups every month in London with successful get-togethers in Leeds, Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, Birmingham and Sheffield. But apparently we don't watch baseball in pubs. UK fans, they list off plenty of good fan accounts, have thousands of followers thanks to their energy, passion and knowledge of the sport. Our podcast gets hundreds, sometimes thousands of listeners to every episode. We've appeared on 5 Live, ESPN, TalkSport, and we don't need to go any further than that. British researchers have won Astrophysics Challenge Awards. What I found most disappointing was the lack of intellectual curiosity. Rates and Barrels is so great precisely because of this. Their ability to peel away layers to get to insights. What we've got here was snark and fans being dismissed. The comment that really stuck in the craw was this. Maybe people will go for the novelty, but where will the impact be? Every single baseball fan's first game was a novelty. Watching new fans learn the game, helping explain it to them, and see them love it is a great joy. Sure, Europe doesn't have the great baseball traditions of Japan, Korea, Mexico, or Puerto Rico, but we have an avid, obsessive fans who want to be seen and appreciated, not patronised and dismissed. If you guys want to give a different perspective in keeping with the thoughtful outlook on their pod, of the great pod, we're available anytime and keen to set the record straight. Trevor May, who was on the pod, then said, "I'd also like to sincerely apologise for my lukewarm approach to this subject and lack of care and curiosity in my answer. Looking back, I could have dug deeper, and for that, I'm sorry. Though it wasn't my intention to be so flippant, I still recognise that I was." Eno Saris, who was on the pod, said, "I feel badly about this. I never intended to gatekeep. Instead of focusing on the difficulty of being a fan there, I should have lauded those that chose the path. I myself was introduced to baseball in Germany, so I should remember the power." Ultimately, and I think it fills into a lot of what a perception of fans in America are seen as. We're seen as the kooky kind of, they like it for the novelty of it. It's like, at one point, probably. But there became a point where that novelty became something a bit different. That novelty became a passion. That novelty became going to games 6,000 miles from where you're from. That passion becomes staying up until God knows what hour in the middle of the night to watch these games. That passion becomes sitting in front of a camera and a mic, talking to yourself about the game. The passion goes into many different places. The passion comes from here. It came from the same place that everybody else has it. Just because our accents are different and our geographical locations are different doesn't mean we don't love it as much as anybody else. If anything, we have to travel further for games. We have to stay up late for games. We don't have the readily available media that we do for the Premier League, for the EFL, even the NFL, is far more mainstream here than Major League Baseball could dream of being. None of us are devoted to staying up until 3 a.m. to watch games. None of us are devoted to spending thousands of pounds to travel 6,500 miles to watch your team if you're an LA fan, if you're a Seattle fan. You have to take time off work for that, but we don't care enough. And I'll be honest, it's one of them ones that I think a lot of people in America don't really understand. They kind of look at us and go, what? You like this? And then you speak to them and they go, oh, you do? I've had that. I've had that when I've spoken to people where it's like, I'll say something that makes them go, oh, okay, yep, fair enough. You're not just like some fan who likes it because it's different. You actually like it. And I don't know, we have a lot to do in terms of growing it here, but clearly we have a lot to do in terms of growing it over in America. And making American audiences and American people understand that we do actually like this sport. We're not doing it for the giggles of it. Like, we do genuinely like it. We do genuinely obsess over this sport, the historical aspect of this sport. And one of those historical things, and it's a segue into something else, is what happened last night with the MLB game at Rickwood Field between the San Francisco Giants and the St. Louis Cardinals, honouring the Negro Leagues and the Negro League players. The sad part was Willie Mays, who played a huge part in both the Negro Leagues and Major League Baseball, passed away just days before the event was meant to happen. And there was a sadness that he was not able to physically attend the event, but also the statements that came out about Willie Mays and the memories that came out about Willie Mays showed the power the man had and the influence the man had, not only on the game, but on the way black American athletes were seen. A day before his passing, Willie Mays said to the San Francisco Chronicle, Rickwood Field is where I played my first home game, and playing there was it, everything I wanted. The son of Willie Mays, Michael Mays, said, I'm sure he's here. He figured out a way to be the centre of attention like he always did. He's the star of the show. He's Willie Mays. There are photos of people standing with monuments of Willie Mays. You can go on Twitter and read about people talking about how Willie Mays was their father's hero or their mother's hero or their influence or their grandfather's favourite player. And that kind of thing matters more than any stat you could possibly imagine. In a pre-game ceremony, a video tribute played before Michael Mays told the crowd, let me hear you. And the crowd broke out chanting, Willie, Willie, Willie. Seated on the field were veterans of the Negro Leagues, men in their 80s and 90s who had been led into the ballpark by current players, steadying their arms and pushing their wheelchairs. There were things that happened in this ballpark that people need to know about, said Mike Yastrzemski, an outfielder for the Giants. They need to know about where Willie came from because he left a legacy in the game that is also far beyond the game. I think that is spot on, but I also think that's the most poignant part about this whole event at Rickwood Field. Yes, there were some excellent players, like Josh Gibson, like Willie Mays, like Satchel Paige. But ultimately it's about telling the story of the Negro Leagues and why ultimately there had to be a Negro League and whilst it's a good event to showcase the talent of the players that were playing in these leagues, it should also be used as a footnote in American history. Not only were these talented players playing in the Negro Leagues, which is as a name for people that aren't in around the league and that haven't grown around talking around the league, is still something that you may hear and you may flinch. Hearing the word Negro in this regard when talking about the Negro Leagues is enough to make somebody blink twice and look back on themselves as if to say, did I hear that right? But how else are you meant to hear this? Censoring it would defeat the object of it. But there is a clip that I'll play now that will probably be struck down by someone or copyrighted, and that's fine. It's a clip from Fox Sports pre-game show with the panel being Derek Jeter, David Ortiz, Alex Rodriguez, and they were joined by Yankees great Reggie Jackson, who said this in 3 minutes. And it became one of the most poignant things, both of the evening, and that has ever been said in any sports broadcast that I've ever heard.
Reggie, the baton has been passed for over a century here. We've been talking earlier about if it wasn't for the Willie Mays, the Jackie Robinson, the Reggie Jacksons, the three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord? I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie, I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really,
we love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson right there.
That's a great history lesson. Reggie Jackson telling us all about it, preaching. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Reggie Jackson is one of the greatest players to have played the game. more people around the world will hear that than how many home runs he's hit, how many World Series he's won. Anything else, that will be the most poignant thing he's known for. Because it shines a light on how people not that long ago were treated. I think there's an idea that that thing, that behaviour, stopped many, 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 many years ago. I think the difference is that people that suffered that are still alive, and they're still able to tell that. And we should be listening to what they say, and we should be understanding why they're saying it. Because ultimately, if Reggie Jackson had never said any of this, people just watch the game and carry on. They share great stories about how Barry Bonds would have taken Satchel Paige over the fence, about what a great player Willie Mays was, and all of this kind of stuff. But to hear stories like that, it's harrowing, it's brutal, it's honest, it's a good insight into America at a certain point in time. And kudos for the panel for just letting him go. Kudos for the production for just letting him go. It didn't need to be stopped. Didn't need to be interrupted. It just let him tell his story. And it was... I've been trying to find the right word to describe it throughout the morning when I've watched it. And I think the word is probably fascinating, because it's an insight into things that I didn't know. And the Negro Leagues is not something I'm that clued up on, to be brutally honest. The more they talk about it, the more I understand more about it. And one of the reasons that I know more about the players than I did before is because not too long ago, Major League Baseball made a decision to integrate the Negro Leagues into the all-time statistics. So now the all-time leader in career batting average, slugging percentage, and on-base plus slugging percentage is Josh Gibson. He is now also the single-season record holder for each category. The thing that makes that particularly interesting is that Josh Gibson has been dead since 1947, and he never played in the Major Leagues. He played in the Negro Leagues. I understand what Major League Baseball are trying to do. And in 2020, Major League Baseball decided that 7 main Negro Leagues would retroactively be granted Major League status. This required integrating into the official Major League Baseball record database the statistics of more than 3,400 black players who had been barred from playing in the American League or the National League because of their skin colour. The process culminated with the May 29th statistical update. Suddenly, the all-time stat leaderboards are crowded with names unfamiliar to most baseball fans, people like Oscar Charleston, Turkey Stearns, and Mule Suttles. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to give these players the recognition that they would have had they been playing in the major leagues, and also then opening people's eyes up to who these people are. My thought on it is just, if you didn't play in the major league era, it almost diminishes and then goes against what it's weird to explain what I mean, in the way that it's like, by kind of saying, oh yeah, these guys would have been, these are the stats they would have had if they had played in the major leagues. It then kind of just goes, well, why aren't they? Why wouldn't they? And it's they were playing the Negro Leagues. Well, what are the Negro Leagues? Oh, it was this. Just integrate the two leagues into like the Hall of Fame. For example, where you have a Negro League area and you have a Major League area. And tell their story, but don't retroactively put them into categories against players that they never played against. It's the same argument you hear when someone says, "Oh, who's the greatest era ever?" And people will naturally say like Babe Ruth or something. And my thing has been for a while with Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth can't be the greatest that's ever played because he didn't play against everybody. He wasn't able to play against everybody. If you didn't play in a post-segregation era, you didn't play against everybody. You didn't have the chance to become the best ever because there was a whole group of players you missed out on in an era where it was barred from doing that. So I think to retroactively kind of go, oh yeah, we're putting them into the same record books because this is what they would have had, and it's like. You can't pretend that everything has been okay forever. You need to tell these stories that are now being told. Honour the Negro Leagues. Honour the players. What they did at Rickwood Field, I personally think was fantastic. Because it didn't try to make them something they weren't. They were telling the stories of what had happened and honouring the players that had played in those times. But by integrating the stats together, it just makes it kind of go, okay, well, makes you look to the side and go, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to in a couple of years' time make people think everything was all right? And I sincerely hope that isn't the case. But please look up for the Negro Leagues Hall of Fame. Listen to people like, listen to the Reggie Jackson interview. Listen back on the stories of people that have been playing the game for X amount of years. People like Charles Hallam, he tweeted, "The significance of me as a black reporter sitting in a press box where black reporters covered Negro League baseball games in historic Rickwood Field in Birmingham isn't lost on me. Bob Kendrick, the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, is a fantastic storyteller and has a passion for the Negro Leagues that anybody can see. They're the people you should be listening to, and they're the people you should be wanting to listen to. I am. I'm going to go find more out about it because it's freaking interesting. But it's also important to know what had come before the Major League Baseball we knew today. Anyway, 41 odd minutes of me chatting away. I'm gonna wrap it up here, I think. Thank you for listening. It's felt good to be back doing this, talking about important subjects and everything like that. Thank you for listening. If you've lasted this long, thank you. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you. Like it, subscribe to the channel, comment if you want. Absolutely fine by me. Thank you for listening and have a great day.